Kneeling by the edge of an unnamed stream, Caleb's fingers traced a piece of wood worn smooth by time. It wasn't just debris, it was a piece of the past he had spent months burying. Beside him, his guide dog Orion let out a soft exhale, grounding him. For the first time since blindness took his world, Caleb didn't run from the memory. The sound of water moved through him, carrying a quiet truth. Some wounds don't bleed where the world can see them, but they echo the loudest in the dark. The running was over. The healing had begun. Some wounds don't bleed where the world can see them, but they echo the loudest in the dark. Every night at exactly 2:17 a.m., Caleb Turner would wake to the same quiet disturbance. Not a sound. Not a dream. But a presence he could feel, pressing gently against the edges of his awareness like a question left unanswered. Beside his bed, Orion would already be awake. Standing perfectly still. His body rigid, ears angled toward something Caleb could not hear. His breath slow and deliberate, as if listening to a rhythm buried deep beneath the silence of the house. And though Caleb could not see it, he knew the dog was staring into the same corner of the room every single night. Unmoving. Patient. Waiting. The small cabin sat just outside a forgotten stretch of road in northern Montana, where the wind moved like it had somewhere important to be, and the night stretched long and unbroken. Caleb had chosen it that way. Far from the noise. Far from people. Far from the quiet reminders of who he used to be, before the darkness came and stayed. At 40, his world had narrowed to textures and sounds, the creak of old wood beneath his boots, the hum of the refrigerator in the next room, the soft exhale of Orion resting nearby.
Beautiful, isn't it, boy?
Each detail sharper now that sight had been taken from him, as if the world had traded color for weight. He had learned to move through it carefully. Counting steps. Memorizing distances. Trusting routines more than instinct, because instinct had once led him somewhere he could never return from. Orion had been assigned to him 6 months ago, a trained German shepherd with a calm intelligence that Caleb respected, but refused to rely on fully. Because trust, once broken, didn't come back easily, not even in the form of loyalty. Still, there was something about the way Orion moved through the space. Deliberate. Aware. Almost knowing. It unsettled him in ways he couldn't explain, especially at 2:17, when the dog would rise without command and face the unseen, like a sentinel guarding a memory Caleb had tried too hard to forget. And on this particular night, as the cold air settled deeper into the walls and the clock ticked toward that familiar minute, Caleb felt it again.
Keep it slow, boy.
That quiet pull beneath his ribs. Not fear.
Stay close, Dad.
Not quite.
Just a little further.
But something older. Something waiting. As if the darkness itself had begun to whisper back.
It's beautiful,
The
isn't it,
first
boy?
time Caleb noticed the pattern, he told himself it was nothing more than a habit the dog had not unlearned. Some leftover instinct from training, the kind that lingered long after its purpose had faded. But habits did not carry weight, and this did. Subtle but undeniable, like a shift in the air just before a storm that never came. At exactly 2:17 a.m., Orion would rise. Not abruptly. Not with urgency. But with a quiet certainty. His paws moving across the wooden floor with a rhythm Caleb had come to recognize even in sleep. And then he would stop at the same place, always the same place, facing that corner as though something invisible stood there waiting to be acknowledged. Caleb lay still, listening, counting his own breaths, trying to measure the moment in a way that made sense. But nothing about it did. Because there was no sound, no movement, nothing that belonged to the world he understood. And yet, Orion remained fixed. Alert.
Keep it slow,
Present
boy.
in a way that made Caleb feel like he was the one missing something essential.
Stay close, Dad.
The clock
Just
on the
a little
wall
further.
ticked steadily, each second landing like a soft tap against the silence. And Caleb found himself counting again, the way he
beautiful,
used
isn't it,
to,
boy?
back when time meant control. When patterns could be trusted to lead somewhere safe. But now, the numbers felt hollow, like markers without direction. He turned slightly in bed, the fabric of the blanket brushing against his arm, grounding him in something real, something he could hold onto. But even that felt thinner than it should have, as if the night had stretched everything just a little too far. Orion exhaled slowly, a low breath that carried more awareness than rest. And then came the smallest sound. Not a bark. Not a growl. But something softer, almost like a question formed without words. And Caleb felt it settle into his chest before he could push it away. He had spent months avoiding questions, building routines strong enough to keep them out. But this one did not knock. It simply appeared, quiet and patient. And for the first time since the darkness took his sight, Caleb did not turn away from it. Because somewhere beneath the silence, beneath the steady ticking of the clock and the stillness of the room, something was beginning to feel familiar.
Just a little further.
Not in a way that brought comfort, but in a way that suggested it had been waiting for him all along. The next morning arrived without ceremony. Just a pale wash of cold air slipping through the cracks of the cabin and settling quietly against Caleb's skin, the kind of morning that did not ask anything from you, but did not offer anything either. He sat at the edge of his bed longer than usual, hands resting on his knees, listening to the faint hum of the world waking beyond the walls. The distant call of a bird. The soft rustle of wind brushing against the trees. And beneath it all, the steady presence of Orion, sitting closer than usual. Not moving. Not urging. Simply waiting. Caleb reached down slowly, his fingers finding the dog's head, tracing the familiar line between his ears. Grounding himself in something steady, something that did not shift when the rest of the world felt uncertain. And for a moment, that was enough. But as he stood and moved through the cabin, counting his steps out of habit, measuring space in the quiet way he had learned, he felt it again. That subtle pull. Not from the room, but from somewhere beyond it. Something that did not belong to routine.
Stay close, Dad.
Something that did not fit into the
further.
patterns he had built to keep himself steady. Orion moved differently that morning. Not ahead, not guiding in the way he was trained to do, but circling slightly, positioning himself. Just enough to be noticed, as if adjusting the rhythm of their movement without breaking it entirely. And when Caleb reached for the door, his hand hesitated for the briefest second. Not because he did not know where it was, but because he felt, without understanding why, that stepping outside might change something he was not ready to face. The handle was cold beneath his fingers, the metal holding the night's chill. And when he finally turned it, the door opened with a soft creak that seemed louder than it should have been, as though the silence itself had been waiting for that moment to shift. Outside, the air carried the scent of pine and distant water, clean and sharp. And Orion stepped forward. Then paused. Glancing back in a way that Caleb could not see but somehow understood. A silent question. The same one from the night before. Still waiting. Still patient. And this time, instead of turning away, Caleb took a step forward into the morning. Not because he was ready.
Stay close,
But because
Dad.
something in him had
Just
begun
a
to
little
wonder
further.
what would happen if he stopped running. The gravel beneath Caleb's boots shifted with a dry, uneven crunch as he stepped farther from the
Beautiful,
cabin
isn't
than
it,
he
boy?
had in weeks. Each movement measured, deliberate. His body remembering distances his mind no longer trusted. While the morning air wrapped around him in layers of cool pine and faint earth, carrying the quiet promise of a day that had not yet decided what it would become. Orion walked beside him at first, steady and familiar, the light tension of the harness guiding Caleb through the uneven ground. But then something changed. Subtle enough that Caleb almost missed it. The line slackening for just a moment before the dog angled slightly to the left. Not pulling. Not forcing. Just suggesting, like a shift in conversation rather than a command. Caleb slowed, his brow tightening as he listened. Not to sound, but to the absence of it. The way the wind seemed to pause between the trees. The way the world held its breath in small, almost imperceptible ways. And he felt that same pull again. Stronger now. No longer something distant,
Keep it
but
slow,
something just
boy.
ahead, waiting at the edge of his awareness.
Stay
Easy,
close, Dad.
he murmured,
Just a
more to
little
himself
further.
than to the dog. But Orion did not return to the path. Instead, taking a few careful steps forward,
beautiful, isn't
then
it, boy?
stopping. His posture firm but calm. His presence grounded in a certainty Caleb could not yet understand. The harness rested lightly in Caleb's hand, the leather warm from use. And for a moment he stood there, suspended between what he knew and what he felt. The familiar safety of routine behind him, and something unnamed in front of him. Something that did not belong to the patterns he had built to survive. A faint sound reached him then. Not loud. Not clear. But enough. The soft murmur of water moving somewhere beyond the trees. Slow and steady, like time itself slipping forward whether he followed or not. Caleb exhaled, the breath leaving him heavier than it should have. And he took another step. Then another. Allowing Orion to guide him off the path entirely, into ground he had never memorized. Into space that had no measurements, no counted steps. Only instinct and trust. And as the air shifted around him, carrying that quiet, persistent pull deeper into his chest, he realized that whatever Orion had been trying to show him, it was not something that could be avoided forever. Because some roads do not disappear when you turn away.
Beautiful, isn't it, boy?
They simply wait for you to return. The ground beneath Caleb's feet softened as they moved farther from the worn path, the firm crunch of gravel giving way to damp earth and scattered pine needles that whispered under each step. And with every shift in texture, his sense of direction loosened. No longer anchored to the patterns he had memorized, but drifting into something less certain. Something that required more than counting and routine. Orion slowed his pace. Not stopping. Not pulling. Just adjusting in a way that guided Caleb without force. His presence steady at the end of the harness, a quiet assurance that there was still a way forward even when the map in Caleb's mind had already ended. The sound of water grew clearer now. No longer a distant murmur, but a gentle, continuous flow, like a voice that had been speaking all along and was only now being heard. And Caleb felt it settle into him in a way he could not explain. Not as a sound, but as a memory of something he had once known.
Keep it slow, boy.
His breath caught slightly as a faint scent reached him.
Stay close,
Cool
Dad.
and metallic.
Just a little further.
The unmistakable trace of a stream cutting through stone. And with it came a tension he had not felt in months. Not fear exactly, but a tightening in his chest. As if his body recognized this place before his mind allowed it. Orion came to a stop. Firm this time. His stance grounded, his body angled toward the water. And Caleb felt the stillness ripple through the harness, a signal without words, a moment asking to be acknowledged. Why here? Caleb whispered, his voice quieter than the wind moving through the trees. And for a second, there was nothing but the sound of water slipping over rock. Steady, patient, unchanged by the weight of his question. He took a cautious step forward, then another. His boot brushing against something uneven near the edge of the stream. A piece of wood, worn smooth by time. And when he crouched slowly, reaching out with careful hands, his fingers traced its surface. Following the grain, the edges, the shape. Until something inside him shifted. Not sudden. Not sharp. But undeniable.
Keep it slow, boy.
Like a door opening just enough to let in a memory he had kept
close,
sealed.
Dad. Just a little
Orion
further.
remained beside him. Silent. Unwavering. Not guiding now, but standing with him.
Beautiful, isn't it, boy?
And in that quiet moment, Caleb understood that this was not a place chosen by accident. Because some memories do not fade with darkness. They wait in the spaces we avoid. Patient as the water. Steady as the ground beneath us. Until we are finally ready to feel them again. Caleb's fingers remained on the worn piece of wood, tracing its edges again and again as if repetition might change what it meant. But it did not. The shape stayed the same. Solid. Familiar. Carrying a weight that had nothing to do with its size, and everything to do with what it held inside him. The sound of the stream moved steadily beside him. Water gliding over stone with a quiet persistence that felt almost deliberate, like it had been here long before him and would remain long after, unchanged by the passage of time or the choices of a single man. Orion shifted slightly, his paw pressing gently against Caleb's boot. Not urging. Not interrupting. Just
Keep
present.
it slow, boy.
A reminder that he was not alone in this moment, even
Stay
as the
close,
past
Dad.
began to rise
Just
around
a
him
little
in ways
further.
he could no longer ignore. Caleb inhaled slowly, the cool air filling his lungs, carrying with it that same metallic scent of
Beautiful,
water,
isn't it, boy?
and something else beneath it. Something older. Something that stirred a memory he had spent months burying under routine and silence. And now it returned. Not as a sharp image, but as a feeling. Heavy and steady, like a truth that had waited patiently for him to stop running. His hand moved along the wood until he found the edge where it met the ground, and the realization settled in, quiet but unmistakable. This was not just any piece of debris. It was part of something that had once stood here. Something he had touched before. Something tied to a moment that had changed everything. His breath grew uneven. Not from fear, but from recognition, the kind that does not ask permission before it takes hold. And for the first time since he had come to this place, Caleb did not try to push it away. Orion let out a soft exhale, his body lowering slightly as if matching Caleb's shift, grounding the moment without breaking it. And together they remained there, the man and the dog, at the
Keep it
edge of
slow,
a memory
boy.
that had been waiting longer than either of them could measure.
Stay
The
close,
water
Dad.
continued to move,
Just a little
steady,
further.
patient. And Caleb understood then that some things do not need to be seen to be known. Because they exist in the
Beautiful,
space
isn't it,
between
boy?
what we remember and what we feel. And when we finally stop resisting them, they do not rush in. They simply return. As if they had never truly left at all. Caleb remained kneeling by the edge of the stream long after the realization settled in. His hand still resting against the wood as if letting go might erase the fragile connection forming between past and present. But it did not fade. It only deepened. Expanding quietly through his chest like something that had finally been given permission to exist. The sound of the water no longer felt distant or separate. It moved through him now. Each gentle current. Brushing against something inside that had been locked away. Not by force, but by choice. A slow decision repeated over time until it became a wall he no longer questioned. Orion shifted closer, his shoulder pressing lightly against Caleb's arm. Grounding him in the moment without pulling him away from it. His presence steady and unwavering, like a
Keep it
silent
slow,
agreement
boy.
that whatever was unfolding here was meant to be faced, not avoided.
Stay close, Dad.
Caleb's
Just a little
breath trembled
further.
as he allowed his fingers to move again. Tracing beyond the wood, across the damp earth. Following the shape of
Beautiful,
something
isn't it,
larger,
boy?
something buried just beneath the surface. And with each inch, the memory grew clearer. Not in images, but in sensation. The weight of the air. The stillness that had once surrounded him. The feeling of standing exactly here before everything changed. He closed his eyes out of instinct, though darkness was already his constant. And for the first time, he did not try to escape it. Instead, he leaned into it. Letting it hold the fragments he had spent so long keeping apart. Orion let out a low, soft breath, his ears tilting slightly as if listening to something beyond the sound of the stream. And Caleb felt it too. Not as a noise, but as a shift. A quiet alignment between what had been and what still remained. The ground beneath his hand felt less like an unknown place, and more like something waiting to be recognized. And in that recognition came a truth he could no longer ignore: this was where he had left a part of himself. Not because it was
Keep
lost,
it slow, boy.
but because he had not been ready to carry it forward.
Stay close, Dad.
The water continued
Just
to
a
move
little
beside
further.
him, unchanged, patient. And Caleb understood then that healing was not something that arrived all at once.
It's beautiful, isn't it,
It was
boy?
something that returned in moments like this. Small and quiet. Asking only that he stay long enough to feel it. Caleb did not know how long he remained there, kneeling at the edge of the stream with his hand resting against the earth. But time no longer moved the way it used to. It did not press forward or pull him back. It simply existed, quiet and steady, like the water beside him that continued its path without hesitation. Something inside him had shifted. Not in a way that demanded attention, but in a way that could not be undone. As if a door long closed had been opened just enough to let something real breathe again. Orion stayed close. His body warm against Caleb's side. His presence unchanged, patient as always. But there was a softness to it now. A quiet understanding that what needed to happen was already unfolding. Without force. Without command. Caleb's hand moved slowly away from the ground.
Keep it slow, boy.
Not to withdraw, but to rest against his chest.
Stay close, Dad.
As if confirming
Just
that what
a
he
little
felt
further.
was still there. Still real. And for the first time in a long while, the weight he carried did not feel like something he
isn't
had
it,
to
boy?
fight. It felt like something he could finally hold without breaking. The sound of the stream seemed clearer now. Not louder, but more present. Each movement of water over stone carrying a rhythm that no longer felt distant or separate, but connected. Like it belonged to the same quiet space forming within him. He took a slow breath, deeper than the ones before. And let it out without resistance. Allowing the moment to settle instead of pushing it away. And in that simple act, something loosened. Something that had been held too tightly for too long. Orion shifted slightly, his head brushing gently against Caleb's arm. Not as a signal. Not as a guide. But as a companion, reminding him that he did not have to navigate this alone. Caleb tilted his head upward. Not to see, but to feel the open space above him. The air moving freely, untouched by walls or boundaries. And for the first time since the
Keep it slow,
darkness had
boy.
taken his sight, the absence of vision did not feel like a loss.
Stay close, Dad.
It felt
Just
like
a
a
little
different
further.
kind of awareness. One that asked him to listen. To feel. To trust in ways he had forgotten.
Beautiful, isn't it, boy?
The stream continued to move, steady and unchanging. And Caleb understood then that healing was not about returning to who he had been. It was about allowing himself to become someone new. Someone who could carry the past without being held down by it. Caleb remained by the stream a while longer. Not because he needed answers, but because for the first time in years, he was no longer trying to escape the questions. And that alone felt like something worth staying for. The air had warmed slightly, carrying with it the faint scent of sun touching the tops of the trees. And though he could not see it, he could feel the shift. Subtle but real. Like the world was moving forward without asking him to catch up, simply inviting him to walk alongside it. Orion stood and stretched beside him, his movement unhurried. His presence unchanged. Yet there was a quiet ease in the way he leaned gently into Caleb's leg. As if acknowledging that something important had
Keep it
settled
slow,
between
boy.
them. Something that no longer needed to be proven.
Stay close, Dad.
Caleb rose
Just a
slowly,
little further.
brushing his hands against his jeans, grounding himself in the familiar texture. But the weight he carried felt different now.
It's beautiful, isn't
Not
it, boy?
lighter in the sense that it had disappeared, but steadier. Like something he no longer had to hold alone. He reached for the harness, his fingers finding it with practiced certainty. And when Orion stepped forward, there was no hesitation this time. No resistance. Only a quiet trust that had not been there before. They began to walk back. The ground still uneven. The path still uncertain. But Caleb no longer counted his steps. He let them happen, one after another. Guided not by memory, but by presence. By the simple act of moving forward without needing to control where each step would land. The sound of the stream faded gradually behind them. Not lost, just becoming part of the distance. A reminder rather than a weight. And as the trees shifted around them, the wind moving gently through the branches, Caleb felt something he had not allowed himself to feel in a long time. Not relief. Not joy.
Keep it slow, boy.
But something quieter. Something more lasting.
Stay close, Dad.
A sense that he
Just
could
a little
exist
further.
within the world again without needing to fight against it. Orion's pace remained steady, his body aligned with Caleb's movement.
Beautiful, isn't it, boy?
Not leading. Not following. But walking beside him. And in that quiet balance, Caleb understood what had changed. Not the world. Not the past. but the way he carried it. When the cabin door came into reach, the familiar creak greeting him as he stepped inside, it did not feel like a place to hide anymore. It felt like a place to return to. And as the stillness settled around him once more, it no longer felt empty. It felt full of something he had nearly forgotten. A quiet kind of peace that does not come from seeing the light,